You talked about sleep. You've recommended a book to be on sleep, and I have. I browsed through that book, and then I went directly to the action points. So that's How We Sleep by Matthew Walker.
Yeah.
To talk about sleep, I think will take a long time, but I'll leave it to you. You could either talk about it in a detailed way, or you could say these are the top two most valuable tips to get sleep. I leave it totally to you.
Sure. All right. Sleep is extremely critical, and it's all the more important because I suffered from a condition called sleep apnea, and my memory started fading a little bit. That's how I discovered. A long time back itself there was some issue, but I never followed through, and much later I found out that I had this. So for me, sleep is a very, very critical element because I know the consequences of not getting the right amount of sleep, and it's a very abused kind of. See, all of in nature, if you go observe, most of nature sleeps for a 40 to 50% of their existential time. We are the only species where we've recommended 1/3, and in that 1/3 we've kind of cut corners and made it extremely aggressive, and we are very proud about it, saying okay, but sleep is a requirement. It's a scientific requirement for your body and mind to get the right kind of rest. And because we think of it as physical rest, I don't need to relax my muscles, what is there? It's far more complicated than that simple explanation. It's a very, very complicated process which we don't understand. The first thing I would recommend is please understand what goes on in sleep, because it has different cycles. The body and mind do different things in that sleep cycle. One of two critical things where sleep is important is that there are processes which actually relax you, which is that, for example, there are capillary movements in deep sleep, which goes like this. It presses and things, which drains the fluid from your muscles. Okay, these are physical activities which happen, but they happen only in deep sleep. So if you don't get into deep sleep, this does not happen. And if you keep doing it again and again, obviously you are going to be fatigued. So allow yourself to be in deep sleep. That's one kind of thing, which is more of a physical thing. On the mental side, in the last stage, which is called the REM stage, rapid eye movement stage, where also we dream, the brain does a lot of processing in terms of releasing past trauma, consolidating memory, what is short term, what is long term, etc. So there is a lot of work that's happening in that stage. Again, now these two are very critical activities. If you don't allow the right amount of time for these to kick in, then you are not really getting the rest that you're supposed to get as per the body's need. You may think, oh, this rest is enough for me, but that's not the point. And for me also, that whole realization came when I started forgetting things. I used to be a quizzer, like you. And at some point, I started forgetting things which were very easy to remember. And then I started thinking, okay, this is, initially as I was okay, there's an overload of information. But later I realized that it's not. There is something more to it. And that's how the whole discovery of the sleep issue kind of began in some way. So it's extremely critical. Few corrective things that I would recommend. First is have consistent sleep timings, because the body works in rhythms. It produces chemicals within your system based on what it assumes is your cycle. So if you keep the times consistent, even if you don't meet the 7.5, 8 hours, at least keep the time consistent so that then the body is able to plan as per that. Okay, there is a rhythm called circadian rhythm, which kind of happens, and that rhythm prepares you. For example, the melatonin levels in your system, all of that are controlled based on what is, okay, this fellow is going to sleep at 11 o'clock in the night. So it then starts its processes and says, okay, build up increases and so on, so that you're able to go to sleep. But then you sleep at 10 o'clock one day, 11 o'clock one day, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, then it gets confused because it's producing that melatonin. Then what you're doing is you're kind of ignoring it, or you're, kind of pushing through it. That kind of disrupts it and confuses the signals that it operates it normally, because it basically, the whole body works on the principle of the sun. That's the light triggers, your waking up thing, where then the melatonin level kind of goes down. It then starts to wake you up so that you're, kind of thing. And through the day, melatonin builds up, and in the night, it kind of peaks so that you automatically go to sleep. But when you meddle with it, one of the ways that we meddle with it is with blue light. because blue light, which comes out of your tube lights, your devices, all of that, mimics sunlight. So the signal that goes to the brain is, oh, sun is still there. So this fellow is not supposed to sleep yet. So let me control the melatonin and not let it go to that stage where it's supposed to take you into sleep. So that's the second thing, which is devices, at least half an hour before thing, switch to yellow lights if you can, and shut off devices about half an hour before you sleep. Then you are naturally, kind of using your body's response to kind of go to sleep. Otherwise, it takes longer for you to kind of, sometimes we just drop off of fatigue because so much of abuse we've done, but naturally, falling into sleep doesn't happen. Natural rhythm follows this whole thing. So consistent times, blue light, eliminating blue light and devices, and also, kind of eating about 3 hours before going to sleep. Why? Because see what happens when you eat, it releases sugar into your system. If you sleep too close, eat too close to your sleep time, what does the body do with all that sugar that goes in? Because, there's no outlet for it.
Right.
You do it because that's the only time when you have time to enjoy food. But it's the worst time for the body because there's no activity, and then all of that gets deposited as fat.
Right.
So simple things, 3 hours before, consistent sleep timings, avoid blue light, keep your room dark as possible, avoid blue lights. If at all you can have a room light in the spectrum of red, maybe a red, kind of night light is okay. But even that, if you can keep it very, very minimal, that's ideal as a thing. And if you're sleeping late, waking up late, make sure that your room is completely dark so that sunlight doesn't come and trigger your responses from 6 o'clock in the morning. If you keep the room entirely dark, at least you've gotten your complete rest. And then only after you come out, then you are, kind of exposing yourself to the sun. So simple things like this, if people can just do, I think it's a good starting point. And get your 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep. Just don't be stupid and don't, kind of thing. Whatever you do, you rest of the time, you can do whatever you want, be mindful and enjoy the rest of the time. But get your 7.5 hours or 8 hours of sleep, because that's required. For a few, very, very, maybe 1 to 2% of the population, that recommendation is not valid. 98% of the population needs that 7.5 hours. So unless you are a superman or a superwoman, it is applicable to you as a thing, because we just think that it is, we make some calculation saying, oh, I'm young, so I will party and I will, kind of thing. All of it adds up in the end. Eventually, then you have to depend on caffeine. Caffeine is another thing which I've been, kind of recommending. Caffeine is a drug. Don't take it. Okay. Because it interferes with it. What it does is that it goes and artificially gives you that high. It goes and blocks. The body naturally has a fatigue sensor. And it's called an adenosine blocker. This caffeine goes and sits over there and on top of that. And so it blocks your sensing of fatigue. And then because it blocks the sensing of fatigue, you think, oh, it's okay. It's all right. I'm feeling good, I think. But what happens is then it wears off and then you crash. And then when you crash, you can't naturally come back because then you're too far down to, kind of thing. You will need another dose. When you keep putting these doses, and caffeine keeps you stressed, it increases the cortisol levels in your blood and things like that. So certainly, to the extent possible, it's avoidable because you don't need it. You just follow the natural kind of energy cycles. Your system adjusts to it. And I used to be a coffee lover. If I stop coffee, I'll have headaches for 3 days.
Oh boy.
Now I've given up, I've given up. Now finally again I've given up. Okay. But every time I give up, I know for 3-4 days I'll be screwed because I have severe headaches. And that's a typical reaction of a drug, right? Which is that it has withdrawal symptoms. When you remove it, if it's a normal thing, you stop eating rice, you not have any withdrawal symptoms. You feel tired because there's no energy, but no withdrawal symptoms. With caffeine, you have withdrawal symptoms. And that's the, thing so I'm not saying don't stop it completely, but use it very, very selectively. Certainly not in the evenings because it stays in your bloodstream. It's got a half-life. It stays in your bloodstream through your, kind of sleep cycles and then interferes with the processes that the body has to do at night.
Right. I'm sure even if one of those tips is implemented, the sleep at regular hours, that itself could be step number 1. And then people would make that a habit and then move to step number 2.
Right. Yeah. That's the other thing. On the habit formation, which I've said in my book also, happiness habits in the recommendation, which is that don't try to do everything, at once. Right. Try to make something a part of your system, make it consistent, because this is not a show-off thing. This is a transformative thing. Transformation happens only with consistency and discipline. So which means you have to do it regularly. So it does not matter if you do all things. It matters that whatever you choose to do, you do it consistently. Because if you do it, then you realize the benefits of it, then you're motivated to, try more things. Otherwise, you do something else, you give up everything, you're back to where you are, then you're saying, oh, all these things don't work. All of them work so long as you learn to do it, because otherwise you get overwhelmed. If you try too many things, the intent may be good, saying, oh, okay, I want to change, so let me do it. Okay. And that cycle also I've been through. And I've realized that overwhelm is just another way of, kind of fooling yourself. It doesn't work. You have to do it one at a time and do your, kind of habit installation. Make sure you are able to actually do it. If you want to sleep at 11:30, it's an intent, right? Then you have to make your lifestyle go around that and choose a time which is practical to do. Rather than saying, oh, okay, I will do 10:30, whereas you never slept at 10:30 in your life, none of your life circumstances will allow you to do it, then don't pick that time. It's just being, kind of not very prudent about it. So choose a time which you can follow, but then once you pick it, to the extent possible, stick to it, even weekends. And sometimes, I kind of don't follow that rhythm because weekends it upsets it. But once you upset it, again, going back is an effort. But because you're committed, you can go back. Otherwise, you kind of get into a new rhythm. It disrupts it. It takes another 2 days for the body to readjust. So even to the extent possible, if you can practice around weekends, that's excellent. But one-off, still okay. But keep times as consistent as possible.
Right. I think it's very, very useful. Very critical subject, sleep. And we go on to one of the last topics, and that is purpose.
Okay.
And the main thing in my mind was the purpose keeps changing. when you're young, you just want to have a lot of money and you want to show off. When you become older, you become more inward looking. So that was the main thing on my mind. What do you do about this shifting purpose? Plus anything else you feel is worthy of talking to our viewers about?